The first interaction we had together that I like really remember was at PT Baltimore. It was like round like 12 or something like that. And I'm sitting down waiting for my opponent to show up, and then you walk up to me and I see you all blinged out. You got the classic rings that you're so well known for. And I'm like, "Do I do we know each other? Do I remember you?" And you're like, "You should remember me." And you just flop down your first place Battle Spirits playmat, and I'm like, "Oh, I remember you now."
Yep,
That
yep.
just
That was great too, because like I remember, because I was joking around with my friends. I'm like, oh yeah, Pheano hates because you were so mad about Battle Spirit. Even just in topic, you're like, this game sucks, and I'm just like, yeah, this game does suck. Um, but I
French
won,
vanilla
and I had to
magic.
play.
French vanilla
Huh?
magic where everything has haste.
Yeah. It's and you got a bunch of cores. It's got dice, a bag of
Core step.
cores.
Core step.
Yes, a good old core step. Um, but I had the plane on my backpack still because I didn't change it on my backpack, and I was like, dude, if I get paired up against Pheano in this pro tour, this is the only time I'm ever gonna have this plane on my backpack. This is gonna be it. It's gonna be and it's like the last round, like where I think we're both like X and 4 or something. It's like, what are the odds we fight? And it's like, oh, here it is. It's time. Finally, Destiny is here. Oh
Oh my
yeah,
god,
that was a
that's
good one.
hilarious. You know I have some mixed
Yes,
feelings on our girl.
of
You
course,
gotta
absolutely.
convince me that Prism's the truth. Why did you bring Prism to this event?
Because I am an illusionist simp, and I must show everyone my super cool cold foils and Marvel Angels. No, so I mean, there were like a lot of deciding factors leading up to this event. I mean, I am like heart and through. I love illusionists. I was gonna play it no matter what. Obviously, the new illusionist came out, and she was very cool, very interesting. She plays more into that ward style of gameplay. Um, which is nice. You have a lot more control of like the game state. She's very similar to like how Dromai. You have a lot more control on how the game kind of flows. You're not at the mercy of your draws, and your deck just kind of saying good luck. Um, but I mean, in that sense, she is similar to Dromai, and her ninja matchup can be less than favorable. I so going into the tournament when I was testing with friends, I think it was a few weeks ago. I'm not sure who was the first whistleblower, but everyone started to hype up Zen as the best
Mm-hmm.
deck to ever exist, and I was like, no way, dude. And then I tested against Alex Vore. He's like, Austin's deck's broken. Let me just show you how stupid this deck is. This game is stupid. This game sucks now. We're all doomed. I'm like, all right, bro. You're just yapping as usual, bro. It's cool. We play, and I beat him with Prism like multiple times. And I'm like, this deck sucks. You are coping. Zen's not good. Uh, but then he starts to beat me a little bit as he gets the hang of things, and we're starting to go like 50-50 a little bit. And I'm like, he does like some of the like, disgusting turns, and I'm like, oh, this deck is disgusting. Like Zen is disgusting. And I'm like, how would Enigma ever deal with 30 damage turns? You don't. You just blow up. You get blown up.
That's the fun part. You don't.
Yeah. So it was like through that like one interaction we had where we threw like 15 games of Prism versus Zen just at each other. I was like, okay, well, this is gonna be if this is the format, this is gonna be a hostile Enigma format. Uh, and if Zen looks like it's gonna be a top dog, which has now become the top dog, um, I think Prism was my best shot because I didn't have like too many reps on some of the other heroes. The only other ones I really felt pretty good about were like Dash,
Mm-hmm.
a Dash IO Max, and honestly, they actually are really good right now, which we can get into later. But I wasn't comfortable playing Dash IO in a format where Azalea is going to start popping up at like one of the second or third most played decks, So I went with Prism.
So
She's really
Zen
good.
is kind of the main reason that you chose to bring a Prism to this event. That
Hundred
specific
percent,
matchup. Okay.
100%, 100%. Yeah, I was. We were talking with the team, me and the AGE boys, and we were like, all right, the top three decks are probably going to be KO, Zen, Azalea. Not in that order, but like those are probably the three most. And sure enough, it was like exactly those three. So I was
Mm-hmm.
like, I feel great into Azalea. That's literally free. I don't think I've ever lost an Azalea game. So to knock on wood, I'm gonna get like Renda Ledger Omega High Roll one day.
Yeah, like you
Um,
can lose that matchup, but like you have so many things going for you that make the matchup pretty favorable. I do feel like there's
right.
some changes that Azalea's been making because of Enigma that have made the matchup like a little bit more cringe. Like Codex of Blood Rot, for example, is like that's kind of
Mm-hmm.
annoying to play into. But like the matchup is still pretty dang good.
Right, yeah, and it's nice too because I play it two different ways as well. I play it a little different than a lot of players too. I bring Vestige in, which I mean, sure, that's only chess piece I run. So I'm not reliant on going aggro as much. So when they have turns where like they just like I'm gonna either blank a turn on an aura or they're going to maybe start coming back into the game. Like they're in a dominating position, right? I don't just
Mm-hmm.
say, "Oh, I'm losing. I need to hope I get an angel out and I just get Murkmouth Rapper." Like I can go, okay, I'm at 5 life. Not good. You don't want to be there, but I'm at 5 life. My opponent's at 28. Sure, winnable game state because I have Atonement on Arsenal, and now I just message combo my opponent, and I
Mm-hmm.
end up winning the game in 2 turns because ALS stops them for 1 turn. Next turn, I just kill them. So,
Yeah, you have so much spike potential with this kind of build, especially with like a
mm-hmm.
lot of the card choices that you've made that really differentiate this from like a standard Prism list. Um,
Right, right.
we can get back into the specific decks in a minute. I really want to talk some more about Zen, but let's go into some of these specific card choices. Like you just mentioned, you're only on Vestige, no Rapture. Why? Rapture just seems like such an integral part of the deck for like winning your like aggro matchups where you're just racing your opponent with heralds, and you just not about that life.
Right. I do like the idea of Rapture. I have the full art. It looks so pretty. How do I
So
not
hey,
run this card?
fantastic art.
Yeah, it looks so beautiful. Um, And there's certain matchups where I kind of like the idea of it. Like I kind of like the idea of it in the Kano. I heard
Mm-hmm.
from talking to Dash players that you do want to run into Dash. That way you just have like the free flip, so you can go like this style of like this was in Thailand, but I was talking to Dash, where he's like, yeah, you use Rapture, and you like swing, you block half, swing an Angel, or you swing a Herald. It has to either hit, and then you get like a Ward 4, so you can like do this like weird fatigue. It's almost like a heavy hitter style fatigue where you're attacking, half blocking, and you're
Mm-hmm.
forcing out cards from your opponent's hand. Yeah, there's like weird fatigue style gameplay. Um, so that's like the only other way. And I thought about putting it in just for that reason. But for aggro, I don't have like a lot of the pieces that like a lot of other Rapture players play. So I'm not running stuff like the pumps. I'm not running any like power debuffers. I don't have any dominate aside from erudition, which is always getting popped. It's erudition just says pop me or block with armor. So I'm not running some of those more necessary cards, and I also don't have the extra 3 red heralds in the list. I actually hate red heralds like a lot. I think they're awful. I hate red cards in this deck. I really want to take them out just because like I play the Vestige combo. But since I'm not running this more aggro style gameplay, Rapture just feels like not as good. And I've never really liked it in the first place because I like to time my angel flips like together and chain them
Mm-hmm.
to like be back to back or like do one on my opponent's turn, do one on my turn. Have like 2 angels swinging, create this board state where you're like at low life and you're like, oh, I can't deal with 2 angels and also all the stuff on board state. And if you ignore my auras, now you're just like, I have 5 cards on board out of nowhere and you're doomed. Which like,
Yeah, you do feel kind of priced into flipping immediately a lot of the time when you're using
yeah,
the Rapture. It's just like, well, I, I'm not getting this discount when I actually need to go, and I can't do the the double flip nice play where I'm flipping my opponent's turn, flipping my turn at like this nice discounted rate. It just like doesn't play out right.
right, exactly. And like, what if? And it has to be so specific, like so timed, right? So like, since I'm not running any pumps, it has to be on the first herald hit. And it's like I can't force the first herald to hit, so like it's not. I can't time it when I want to,
Yeah,
so
you
my
don't get to
opponent can
decide
time
whether
it
or
for
not you
me.
do that.
Exactly, exactly. So like, what am I gonna do? Like on the second here, I have to throw a second herald and then let that one hit. I'm gonna just like flip it now. Like it doesn't make any sense. It's too easy to play around in my build, to where it's like it's not as good. Especially if my opponent knows what I'm doing. Like in top eight, it's doomed. I can never bring it in top eights. My opponent knows exactly what I'm doing. Or just like any player who just catches on and like, oh, he's not playing any pumps, is he? We're halfway through the deck. I haven't seen him pitch any. You're either at the bottom or he just doesn't run him. So
So it's like a
they're just
combination agency thing, and it doesn't quite fit the rest of your deck list. Where like because you've made these other
yeah,
card choices, it just like doesn't quite mesh with what you're doing.
exactly, yeah. And at that point, I'd rather just like put like a slot on like an Iris or something, just to have like a guaranteed matchup in the Guardian, rather than like you know Maybe I'll bring it in for Dash if I need to, if I can test it some more. Maybe I'll bring in a Kano, but yeah, it just never plays the way I want to. And like the one it gives like when you think about the math of it, really so it's 2 extra resources, right, when an angel hit or when a herald hits. But Vestige is 1 extra resource and I can keep triggering it. And then when I start getting my combos going, then it's just like the value is just unparalleled, right? So yeah, it's a hard bargain for sure.
Yeah, and when you're doing the combo thing, it's not even like straight up just a math thing because you're doing things that the deck isn't normally able to do with 4 card hands because you're not playing with 4 card hands, and then each card is worth more under the vestige, where you're able to put out
Right.
multiple auras and such. So like, yeah, that totally makes sense.
Yeah, and
I
I can
know.
always like
No, no,
merciful play an Ode to Wrath on my opponent's turn, like that kind of stuff too. The
mhm.
classics. Yeah.
I know there was
Yeah.
one matchup that I actually quite liked the vestige in towards the end of the meta. The KO matchup. I actually was starting to do it in that matchup. But like this, it makes total sense for this list to not even attempt to do that where you're so heavy into auras. I know I was
Mhm.
ending up near the end just like hating going auras into KO because you mentioned this in your other video you just made in a video. It was on, what was it, Arcane Games? Is that the name of the
Yeah,
channel?
Arcane Games. Yep,
I'm
Arcane
gonna
Games.
throw a link in the description if I remember for that interview with Chris. That was a great video. I watched it right before this.
Cool, cool, cool.
But you mentioned that you would make the game about their scab skins a lot of the times,
Mhm.
and I've tried doing that a bunch, and I never win the scabs
Yeah,
game.
Scavs
It's
Gamble.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's they always roll the 6 into me, so I'm like, okay. So I was
yeah.
trying to win the matchup without making the game about that, and I was having some success, kind of coin flipping the matchup a bit.
Mhm. Yeah, it's become harder too now with Sash. Like it's definitely I need to take like another approach to it because they have Sash now, so they can really just like burst aggro you down with the
Hmm.
really the Wild Ride, Pulping, Bare Fangs, plus Claw, and it's just like okay, dude, relax. They can just kill you out of nowhere now.
Yeah.
Um,
Ooga
so
booga.
it's not as easy. Yeah, just Ugabuga is like, oh, okay, here we go. So it's not as easy as doing forcing the auras as much anymore. So I definitely like I'm thinking about taking a revamp approach to that, but it just might be like dropping the haze bendings maybe. I don't know yet, but I mean, KO's been kind of going down, and if that's like the
Hmm.
one matchup I have to lose is KO, sure. The way I look at KO now in the meta is like there's gonna be like a few really good KO players at the top tables, but it's not gonna be like last format where it's like every table has like a KO almost every other seat. I feel like after like nationals, for example, after round 3, I didn't see like any KOs like in top tables. Like they were like here and there for sure. They were scattered about, but like it wasn't like I remember like the California Pro Tour where KO was like 87 or something ridiculous. It's just like every table is KO, and I'm like, oh my god. This is like okay, I have a pretty good chance to dodge KO. It's like I have as good a chance of fighting an Azalea as I do fighting a KO. So
And it's not like
I'll
you're
take those gambles.
sacking the matchup. It's like you can still win.
Yeah, exactly. There are key points to win for sure, depending on like how my hands go and like the way I can kind of navigate a turn.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Or they do make the game about their scabs, and you do actually win the scabs rolls.
For sure, and I've actually won games too where like I was playing in Japan with a few KO players there, and they had the sash and everything too, but they were rolling like hot on scabs, killing auras, and I was still able to just control the game state to that point because I got library on board, and at that point, like you get early game library against that deck, pretty big. 5 card hands is pretty good. Five
That
hands,
certainly
pretty good.
solves the matchup quite a bit.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely
so you
helps.
we mentioned it a minute ago. You had Iris in the list. I think good time now to talk about that. The Iris package as well as the extra auras because you're on more auras than the traditional Prism list. A lot of the Prisms are just on like Genesis Merciful Arclight as their yellows with a handful of blues to kind of round out the aura package so you could double aura. Usually about 5 blue auras between not merciful between passing and pierce, but you're
Mhm.
on way more. You've got Parable, you've got, oh, where are they? Parable, Ode, and then you've also got Haze Bending. So you're just not playing Shimmers and one copy of Parable, I believe. And other than that, you're
Yep,
playing all of them.
yep. You see,
So
I have cold foils. I gotta use them, 100%.
that's fair.
No,
Sunk cost fallacy.
yeah, I gotta use it. Gotta use it. I love the cards. No, I mean, like, I think I've always ran like I've always ran every single yellow aura for the illusion, like the prism ones at least,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think even when I was running like the really bad weapon with this new prism, I ran all of them just because like when I was first creating this deck like a year ago, and I was like working on it, I'm like, what is the most broken thing this hero can do? Her auras have historically just been overpowered. Like it is just there's so much value. Sure, they cost a lot. Sure, they cost four. But when you're using Vestige, they basically cost three. And like with Soraya, they're just so easy to put two on board. Or now using Tome of Fendel, really easy to put two on board.
We'll get back
Um,
to that in a minute. That's a card I really
yep.
want to spend some time talking about.
And just like the value all of them get is just like insane. There's like it's like three different kind of value points, right? Like obviously attacking it usually eats like a pretty big amount of damage, or maybe a tiger, whatever nowadays. But it can eat damage. It can be a distraction, or your opponent ignores it, which is the second point of value of them, like forcing your opponent to be in this game state of what do I do? Like that's my favorite thing about Prism is like, you force your opponent to say what do I do? And like this game is hard to play enough as is. Like this is already a hard game to play. So like saying, okay, now it's a hard game, and you need
You
to
mean Flesh and
decide
Blood
how
in
to
general?
like Flesh and Blood in general. Yeah, exactly. Like Flesh and Blood as a card game is hard. Like there's so many decision points, and the game goes on so long, and like every mistake you do like adds up eventually, right? So like you put like three auras on board, and you say you need to figure out what the best order to attack is right now, or if attacking aura is even the right play to begin with. And usually, like your opponent just might have like a brain shutdown, or like I have no idea what to do.
Or
And
there's
then
no
all the
right answer
auras,
at all. Sometimes there's just
yeah.
no right choice. It's just like,
Sometimes there isn't. Yeah, sometimes you have like three different lines you can do depending on which aura they attack. And like a lot of these auras just gain like a lot of value over time. Like Merciful being the first aura you can play on board gives you that first soul to start doing your Soraya turns. Doing your like okay now you have the two soul you can Soraya. Genesis is obviously broken. I'm not even go into that. And like Parable in Ode to Wrath. So Ode to Wrath has a second text that nobody's ever read before. All your illusionist attack actions can go again. The amount of times where I've had to turn the card around, like when I say go again, they're like, "What do you mean go again? You pitched a blue." Like, read this card. They're like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa,
I even
whoa."
forget about that sometimes. My in at Indy, I played against David Rude, and I think it was one of the. It was on stream. You can't hear me talking because they don't have like we're not like mic'd up or anything. But it's like my third turn of the game that I haven't drawn a yellow, and but I have an ode out, and I just audibly complained about the fact that it's my third time not drawing a yellow and not having go again for my turn. And he just looks at me, looks down at my board, picks up ode and reads it, and then just gives me the side eye like I'm trying to juice him on that, and I'm just like, ah, shit, I forgot about that. You right?
Yeah, that's a thing, right? It is. And there's definitely times where you just draw like you can go like off of blue just two heralds, and it's like it's kind of nice. Also, the other good thing about the Wrath, especially in this build, and I can understand why like the Rapture builds can't run it. But the reason we can run it is because we always play Vestige and we always play Tome. So the light tone, right? So just being able to like swing at Herald and your opponent's like, whatever, I'll let it hit, no big deal. I'm gonna take all this damage. I'm playing Zen. Who cares? You're like, okay, cool. So anyways, Tome, draw three more cards. Now I can throw four Heralds at you this turn. And also you're gonna take one on top of every damage you take. Um, Good luck dealing with that. So
Yeah,
like
that's
an
always
Odor
been
at
like
6
one of the things that's really restrictive about the deck. When you,
mm-hmm.
you end up a lot of the times having diminishing returns on number of cards in your hand, where it's like 5 cards, I can do stuff with it. 7 cards, I'll find a way to use all these cards. 8, 9, 10 cards. Okay, now I don't have enough action points to play everything. If I'm not
Mm-hmm.
playing a crazy amount of yellow auras. Again, like thinking about the traditional list where we're only playing the like 6 to 9 auras in every matchup. If you're holding a
Mm-hmm.
hand to heralds, you've only got the go again from your Luminaris. So you can't throw 4 to 5 heralds, but when you have the ode and you draw all these cards, it's go time. You can just keep going.
Exactly, and that's why I usually like to run library in every matchup too, because it creates a secondary win condition where like if I have Odorath and library on board, like I will be throwing three heralds at you, possibly an angel as well. Like that's just so like oppressive. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's already 21 damage off three heralds on top of all the damage stacking off Odorath triggers, and any angels I want to put on board as well. And I have a lot of flexibility in how I maneuver that as well. And are you really going to ignore my Genesis to attack my Odorath? Okay, sure. Even better. Okay, now I'm gonna loop you. Now I'm gonna use a loop. Now I'm gonna Arclight loop you. Thanks for ignoring my Genesis.
Did
So
you
it's
did you
just
get that
one
off
more
at all
aura.
over the weekend?
I did it I actually did it a few days ago against Zen, but no, everyone always attacks the Genesis first, so I never got a chance to actually do it.
Hmm.
But that's because they left Odorath on board. But if you attack my Odorath, then I would have looped you, you know. So that's like it's basically I put two win conditions on board and I say, what would you like to lose to today? And no one, everyone knows the Genesis loop because they've seen it happen on stream. No one knows the Odorath win condition, which is like, so when you put two on board, they're like, oh wow, what do I do? You know, and it is hard because you don't know what's right because sometimes actually attacking Odorath is the wrong time, like it's wrong to do because it's like sure you attacked it. I actually had no plans on using it for the rest of this game. So it can be difficult. As for Parable, it's kind of a stabilizer card. And also, like, if you're playing against any deck that does run poppers, it just like turns them off, and your opponent doesn't think about that. That's like an interaction your opponent won't think about at the time. Like, oh yeah, I need to attack this Parable because my poppers aren't going to work in 5 turns from now. Like, that's no ridiculous. Um, but like you play it against the Zen, right? You go like Parable, Arclight, Zonal. First, you have to deal with Arclight, and then when they start their big turn, right? They're like swing, 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 swing. You basically just like auto war debuff them. So now they're doing uh like probably 6 less damage, and then if you throw in your gauntlets as well, that's like another 3 or 4. They're doing less. So it's just nice to have on board and like force your opponent to go, okay, well I can't do all this damage, and then obviously sticking again a parable next to a Genesis or a parable next to a Merciful, your opponent's like, okay,
What do you want to
like
lose to?
what exactly? Like, are you gonna kill my Genesis, but then you have another turn of losing a bunch of like power, or are you gonna start blocking me now? Okay, where you're blocking me, that means I can set up my auras again, because you block one attack, now I can set up another aura, like, or I can
Hmm.
set up an angel and aura, you know. So it gives me like a lot of options. It kind of gives me a little leeway, and especially against like any if a player starts to get greedy. And they're like, I can kill this. I can kill him. You know, I can do it.
That
I'm so
happens
he's at
so
5
often.
life.
I smell
Yep.
blood in the water. Face, face, face,
Mm-hmm.
face.
Exactly, and they'll ignore the parable, and then the parable just ends up like blocking like 5, 6, 7, 8 damage,
I'm
and
sure
then
you saw
especially.
the game that LL'd OG Prism. That was a
Mm-hmm.
classic game of that, of just
Yeah.
smell blood in the water, and the shimmers goes for like 15 value. It's just like,
Mm-hmm. It just starts to ramp. That's like the classic illusions play, right? So it's just adding these cards that say, all right, let's cause my opponent to make a mistake, maybe ignore an aura, maybe they actually say, I need to attack every yellow aura that ever exists on board, and so they're going to attack like a parable over my Pierce Reality. Okay, cool. Now I'm swinging Erudition for 7, and they're like,
mm-hmm.
oh right, that's a thing, you know.
Free
So
teddies.
exactly. So I just like creating this board state so my opponent can't really decide, and I have to run every single one, and also make use of other cards I have in hand as well.
So something you mentioned a second ago is you're talking about playing the Parable into Zen. That is a
Mm-hmm.
question that I think people might have looking at this list where they see that you're playing the Iris, you've got these extra auras. Is this a switchboard, or are you actually playing these extra auras in other matchups? Are these things that are just like, no, 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 I'm just like happy playing these even without the Iris in other matchups?
100%. I do like playing a lot of these auras in other matchups, even without Iris. I actually play this deck like I'm playing Iris would, because I know with Odorath I can catch back up on life, or with like Merciful and Genesis. Like just when these auras start to stack together, the effects they start to like give you, they just ramp up to like the most insane damage you can think of, right? And your opponent, if your opponent can't control them all, then it's really good. And then in the Zen, like I'm not obviously trying to go double aura against them. That's stupid. But you can just like catch them in game states where they can't deal with everything, and then they're like, "Oh, okay, well, this sucks," kind of situation, right?
Hmm.
But I usually do play all these auras into every matchup. Haze bending kind of sits out on the sidelines these days, depending on what I'm feeling. Uh,
Is that
I
one kind
think
of married to the Iris?
a little bit. And I do like haze bending into decks that want to control my auras but are a little slower. So like I'll play it into new for example. I think haze bending is quite good into new.
That makes sense.
Usually yeah, new players actually usually attack you now. I found a lot of new players just go face so they ignore it anyways. But we just discussed, if you're ignoring Parable, Ode to Wrath, Genesis, like you're gonna ignore all my auras just so I don't get a haze bending trigger. Very cool. But the second I do get the haze bending trigger, now your dagger doesn't work, and that is like it doesn't seem super big, but it's actually very big, like in that matchup, because now like it gives me so much flexibility on how I need to block. They don't have to. There's certain things they aren't allowed to do, and even just like being able to arc, like when I do my arc light turn and I have a haze bending sitting on board, and they're like, okay, well I killed arc light. Okay, well now I have a haze bending trigger. Now I have one spectral shield. Now your next turn is also weaker because one of your daggers aren't going to hit. And if you are running, usually they run like minus defense on your attacks, and then the Mistblade one, right? So I can block, yeah, like Spider's Bite and Mistblade. So you can like block Mistblade with your shoes, keep the special shield for Spider's Bite, and you can block out however you need to. So I like to run Haze Bending in a few matchups. I also run to like Mech, but we don't talk about Mech. We don't. Mech's not good. Mech's not a good matchup. We don't talk about that one.
So we won't go to. I just added Mech as my last note on the show notes. Scratch that.
We can talk about it, but it's not good. It's not. I don't like the matchup. I don't like the matchup.
Yeah, that's all traditionally been a hard matchup for both Prisms. I felt like they're both a popper deck and an action point deck, kind of like how KO is like I'm gonna get you on both ends of the spectrum, but also here's a lot of damage.
Right, and that's kind of like become the worst matchup, especially for my build specifically, just because of like the way I play this deck. It is what it is. I've accepted it. There's nothing you can do. The only thing you can do is you go aggro race. You drop like you have to drop like some of your silly auras. You just have to like erase them. But it's so.
Did you just call
so cringe?
Silly?
I know. It hurts. That's how bad it is. I just start to maul. I almost beat a dash once, but no, I've never beat that deck. It's just so bad. It's just so hard. It's just so bad. I mean, I'm already coping just thinking about it. Ugh. I'm in shock. It's like war flashbacks. Can't do it. Let's talk about Zen. Psychopathic. Let's get away from Dash.
One last thing on before we move off of the auras. Where are you actually bringing in the Iris? I think you already mentioned Guardian. That makes sense. Are there any other matchups that you're like, this is in the deck for this matchup, and I'm like really happy this is in the list for this to like cover this weakness?
So I have been running it usually into Levia, and I was running into Rhinar. But I started tests on my free time and like at locals and whatnot. I started to test this build into Levia with Luminaris. I did win one game. I've lost another. But my thought process is that it would already really hurt against Levia with Iris, because you're forcing them to roll scabs and they can just kind of kill you and ignore you sometimes. But now the new card that just gives you like Omega value doesn't even seem like a real flesh blood card. I'm like, oh, this is a card.
Are you talking about the Levia card?
Yeah, the new Levia card. It's like you banish 3, gets go again, +1. Yeah, it gives +1 go again. And then you just play a free card from Banish Zone, so it just gives you like, like 13 value on one card or whatever. Super cool. Yeah, classic. You got to hit 3 cards.
An average Zen turn.
Yeah, just, not quite the Zen turn, right? But yeah, that card, they have so much go again now that like it feels a lot harder to Iris them. So I feel like I need to like play Luminaris to strip cards from their hand. But yeah, mainly it's for really just Guardian and then the Bolton Copium. Bolton, much like Dash, is very hard because he does a lot of damage. He can block really well, and he can get multiple action points over the course of the game, right? So it's really hard to like, okay, I have 2 auras, or at any point you just pop double aura. Or he doesn't even like, he can block your, so annoying. He can block 15 value of block, armor, all cards in hand, kill an aura still.
Armor, which Dash doesn't.
Yeah, he has fridge up and armor, everything blocks for 3, and then he can just swing his weapon for free and pop any aura. So like, oh, it's so cringe. Yeah, the matchup is.
And he also has
awful.
On hits into the Angels as well.
Yeah, exactly. So like that's why we run Iris into that matchup, just because it's like, all right, in any matchup where they're attacking auras, and they're more like blocking style, but they can't like kill you immediately. It's nice because Haze Bending will allow you to kind of start ramping up a bunch of special shields, and you have a bunch of other auras to kind of start popping off. You have your big churn, you get 3 auras out. or 2 auras, 2, 3 auras, and you go, okay, you won't be able to kill all my auras in time. Now I'm going to start swinging 4 at you, 4,
Mm-hmm.
and like try and kill you before you kill all my auras and kill me. And I've had success against Bolton doing that style.
Which
I
secretly may be more than 444.
Yeah,
Might be five
exactly. Yeah,
five
sometimes
five.
it could be 5 5 5. Right, exactly. So I've had more success against Bolton than like Luminaris. There was a game in California where I was playing Luminaris. I was like, all right, I'll do Luminaris against Bolton. I had the most dominating game state you could like think of. Right, I had like almost every aura on board except Odoraph, which was my mistake. Um, and then
Classic
like a
color.
few Angels. Yeah, right. And then like my opponent was at like 8, and I was at like 30, and he won that game. And I was like, wow, because like I didn't have Odoraph, so I couldn't overextend. So eventually, he just started blocking out all my turns and killing all my auras, and he just reset the board. And I'm like, that's insane. Like no one else can block out every single attack I do and reset the board except Bolton. That's the only
Was
hero
he
that can do it.
Raiden?
He was rated. Yeah, he was rated Bolton. So he was just like free attacking my auras, blocking out every single turn, playing all the D reacts. So I'm like, I lose this every game. But
If
on
you, the viewer, don't understand that, the Raiden, it attacks for 0, but Spectra doesn't care what the attack value of the card is. It's just seeing, was it targeted for an attack. So it doesn't care that the Raiden didn't get text that turn. So you can just block with your entire hand and then push the Raiden into an aura and pass, and eventually you'll clear through everything.
Right, and I wasn't too sure how popular Bolton was going to be going to nationals. Usually, he's not very popular, but the Bolton players who are dedicated do very well with him. For
Mm-hmm.
example, there was a Bolton player right above me the entire weekend until he lost last round.
Mm-hmm.
So he was on Axis Bolton, which is like totally different, anyways. But I mean, if I was playing Iris and Axis Bolton, I'd probably win because it's a math deck, right? That
Mm-hmm.
does a combo. So
Yeah,
yeah,
Prism traditional meta is pretty good into the math decks. It's just oh, you're playing a math deck, well, I'm playing an unfair deck. We're
right.
we're not doing the same thing here.
We're playing two different game styles, exactly. And the board state just goes out of hand. So yeah, it's just like Iris is just the one card, you know. Like if I'm
Mm-hmm.
playing all these auras anyways, like even if I took Iris out, this list wouldn't change. The only thing that maybe comes out is phase bending. Um, but yeah, I think Iris is just a nice one up card. You know, it's like an equipment slot that
Do
you
you
always
think
have it.
that you could win the Guardian matchup without it?
I think so, 100%. There are a lot of players who do win without Iris. With time skippers, if they're running time skippers into Guardian, it does become a bit more finicky. Uh, by finicky, I mean like kind of a nightmare.
Yeah.
Uh, but like it's possible. I just don't like navigating that game state. Like I know how to loop. I looped a lot. I used to loop all the time against Dromai. It was so easy to loop against Dromai. But like I just don't like navigating a game state where like my opponent's pressuring me down. I have to be the one to like be doing all this stuff and setting up this loop. And like I do have like more of the agency, but it's not like I don't know. It's okay.
Yeah.
I I'd rather just play Iris and win.
That is
So
speaks to also something that you mentioned in the other video. You were, and I agree with this wholeheartedly. One of the things with Prism was that the more of an attention or focus that the meta has on Prism's existence, the worse she gets. She's very
mhm.
targetable. You were saying, and
Yeah.
that's a good example of that with the time skippers, where if people just start jamming time skippers in their deck, your life gets much harder.
Exactly. Thankfully, this format is so hostile with Zen. I don't think you can really afford to target Prism. But on the flip side, I don't think Prism's in the spot where she needs to be targeted. Like you see, like she's still not like the most played deck,
Hmm.
and she's like good players are putting good like results up with her, and she's getting like one top 8 every so often. She hasn't won anything still. She's still like a very hard deck to navigate with. And she still gets like she can still lose a Zen. Like she still can get shut down by a Zen because Zen is just so insane, right? And then now decks are also jumping into the meta that are like difficult for her, like Dash is becoming more relevant. So that's just like,
Hmm.
oh, here we go, you know. But thankfully she doesn't have to be super targeted right now, so it's not like every matchup's a nightmare. You're gonna have a lot of good matchups, so I think.
Hmm.
Yeah,
So there's one last card I wanted to talk about before we started jump back to talking about like the Zen matchup and such.
for
I
sure.
think it's the most interesting card in the deck. Toma Fandel. We had talked
Yes.
about this card over Twitter like months ago.
Hmm.
And I loved your logic behind it and what it does for the deck. I'm give me one upvote and I'll add Tome to my deck kind of person, and then upvote my own thing.
Uh,
I jam Tome in so many decks.
I tried to
I
play an
love the
Enigma
card.
myself. Yep.
Oh,
I
oh,
wanted to. I wanted to like go. This is back when we had. This is back when we thought that the red generic thing, the red generic aura, like got
mm,
go again, and was like actually ward. So you could like play it, get go again, and like, oh my god, I played Tome and I
Enchanting
used my
Melody.
boots and I, yeah, enchanting melody. Yeah. Like you played Tome from Arsenal, draw a bunch of cards, and then you play. Then you pitch a transcendent chi. Use your boots. You play enchanting melody. It was so bad. But I was like, oh man, if it worked, it'd be so cool. You go again, you get your action point back, and you just keep playing
Man
your
after
aura.
my heart. Man after my
Yeah.
heart right now. Oh.
Um, but no, that was not good. That was not a play. I tried that, and the deck was terrible, but it was cool. Cool idea.
But we don't have any action point shenanigans. We don't have a Chromai. We don't even have Mage
Mm.
Master Boots. What is this doing in the deck? Why are we playing Tome? Why are we playing distinctly
Um,
worse Tome?
right. So it is a interesting card. I wasn't sure about it at first either. I saw like people talking about it on the Yellow Discord a little while back. I don't chat too much in the Illusionist Discord, but I like to keep an eye on it in case anything spicy comes out. And I saw someone mention Tone, and I was like, I liked it. We used to run it in Drumline. Let's give it a try. And I tried it, and it started to make a lot of sense. Like it again, as the math, uh, it creates like sort of math elements where your opponent thinks they're going to kill you, and you just like go up by like too much life for them to actually deal with you and like kill you immediately. Um, but the other thing is like just setting up double aura uh, can be quite important to force your opponent to like attack the wrong decision point. And against Zenith specifically, it's really good when your opponent's like, they're blocking all their stuff, right? And they're like, I'm gonna do my combo turn, and you might not have ALS yet, or maybe you do have ALS, right? But it can dig further for ALS, or it can set ALS up with a second aura typically.
Mm-hmm.
Because I found when I was doing my playtesting, um, without Tome, there'd be a lot of times where like, the amount of times I have this hand, it's so frustrating. But it's like I have a hand to play an ALS, I have a Genesis in hand, but I cannot play the Genesis because I'm missing one resource. Typically, this will give you the one resource and an arsenal if the ponder token from your Soraya, you didn't grab Soraya that turn. You grabbed it way earlier for XYZ reasons, which happens quite often. It can
Mm-hmm.
happen. So it's very nice. Life stabilization is very good. I just like being able to set up a lot of auras and usually getting enough resources for Arclight to like have an Arclight plus another aura or two. The only times it's ever awkward if I want to like play another aura and play like a blue aura, but then it's like it's fine. And it's a yellow pitch. It works with all the cards, works with Nars, so it's kind of exactly where we want to be at on like creating board state and forcing our opponents to different situations and getting some of the resources we may need to put on like a really gross board state like 3 auras or something like that.
It also kind of works nice too with the cost curve of other things that you're doing, because like
Mm-hmm.
there'll be a lot of turns where you open the round by putting something into your soul with like a Genesis or something, and then you pitch a yellow to swing with your addition figment. Now
Mm-hmm.
you pitched a yellow because the vestige is going to make 3. You spend 2 to attack. You still have the 1 float. So then you get to just play your pot of greed from Arsenal without actually pitching another card to do that. So you get super good value out of the tome.
For sure. And like even with like a 4 card hand, if like Tome is one of the cards in your hand, you have like a yellow, a Herald, a blue, and a Tome. Maybe like an arc. Let's say an arc light and Arsenal. Terrible play. I don't know if I'd ever do this, but it's definitely something you can do. It works out pretty well. So you I liked it. I liked it. I liked it. So you swing a Herald, right? Pitch your yellow. Your other card is blue Herald, Tome. You have two lines of play. Your opponent blocks out this card, and you go, okay, play the blue Herald, pitch the other yellow Tome, the Tome Fendel. Or my opponent goes, whatever, I'll take it. Who cares? I'm playing Zen. I'll take it. I'm going to kill you. You're like, okay, super pog. Tome, pitch the blue that's not 4 resources, draw 2 cards, play ALS Arsenal.
Mm-hmm.
My opponent's just like, oh, well, I just took this. ALS 6 on board. Whatever it was there, they might have ignored 6 on board. I got a Figment, and I get on Arsenal. It's not the best thing to do with an ALS, but it definitely can just it's free. It's a free ALS. Or you typically go maybe Tome from Arsenal. You have a Genesis and a blue in hand. Pitch, draw 2. Now you have gain 4 life. Play Genesis, flip an Angel for life, just to gain a little life. You probably grab if you grab a Figment, just grab whatever. Grab like a Judge. Grab like a Ward. Grab a Herald of War. Figment of War, and then Arsenal card. So you get your Arsenal back. You gain 4 life. Get a Genesis on board, like a Merciful Son. It creates like nice little play patterns you can do, and it's a very flexible card. I think it's a very flexible card. Kind of like when people used to play like E-Strike, I guess, and Dromai. It's like, oh, it's a flexibility card, right? Oh, this is your flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
You pitch it to attack. You can draw a bunch of cards, gain life, stabilize, dig for your pieces. It's a good card.
I think I wouldn't call it a flexibility card personally. What I would call it would be a role filler. It fills so many like different like role playing type of elements of the deck that like it's like the perfect card to fit so many different niches in the deck.
Mm. Yeah, 100%, 100%. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that makes more sense.
One thing too that I know I was looking for this kind of effect when I was doing a bit of deck building with the deck. I ended up not playing Tome of Pheanoblack on my list because I was just net decking Lucas's deck for the calling. But I know an effect that I was constantly wishing I had in the deck when I was playing Prism a lot was just more Pot of Greed style cards, just more digging. Because one of the things that you'd run into a lot would be like, you'd get to a turn where it's like, I have to go here. I don't have a choice. Like, I'm either running out of time or the hand is such where like I just have to go with this kind of hand. Like I've got like a Tome of Divinity and Arclight and they just killed my Merciful, so I can play a Genesis off this blue, and I already have the Erudition in play from a previous round. Like, it's not getting better than this. It's go time.
Mm-hmm.
But you end up on the subsequent turn not finding the pieces to keep going, where like you're just holding a hand of like blue heralds or something after everything's said and done, and it's just like, this is not enough. I gotta close this life lead. If I just throw some blue heralds at them, I'm not winning this game. So the extra digging during that can help you find the pieces for you to continue getting another Erudition turn, for example, or finding the resources to double or triple aura, as you already mentioned, on that turn. So it's just like,
or you just draw another tome, keep going. Who knows? Yeah, world's your oyster.
Like, just like you're drawing so many cards, and you have so many draw card effects in the deck. Where adding even more digs you into more. It's so silly. You end up having so many hits in the deck.
Yeah, you go through your deck quite fast. I think, especially once like the mid game starts to go through. If you can get like libraries on board, and get your Genesis triggers. And even without anything on board, just being the starter, it definitely goes a long way. It goes a long way. And sometimes you do just need draw cards, especially in this format where Zen is saying, we have 3 turns to play Flesh and Blood. We're playing Blitz, bud. And we have 40 life. We're playing 40 life Blitz. You ready? Let's play. And you go, okay, well, let's play then. I'm going to start drawing as many cards as I can, and I'm going to combo you to death. I'm going to show you what the real combo deck is.
And we're already close to Blitz life totals as Prism.
Exactly, right? Exactly. So we gotta get going as fast as possible. I think the meta, like, I was already liking it, but I think this meta really enforced that. Okay, we really need it for Zen specifically, and there's other matches where it's just kind of nice. You don't want to run and everything, but it's definitely nice just getting things set up and regain that life against heroes that want to attack you, like Nuke, who's gonna go face ignore your auras. You can flip out a Tome of Fendel from your arsenal and just restabilize and gain 5 life and go to 8 or 9. Your opponent's like, whoa, that's bad. That's what you got. You just restabilize and put a Parable on board. You're at 9 life with a Parable on board. Yeah, good luck, bud.
So we mentioned it a bunch here. Zen.
Yep.
I don't think it's immediately obvious looking at Prism that would be a good matchup. And you've got all these non-blocks in the deck. You're starting at 32. What makes that matchup not just playable, but it sometimes just even a good matchup? You can still lose it, but like, what are the tools that you have as Prism that make this matchup playable?
Well, your cards have a lot of text, and your Zen players usually can't read because they're playing an aggro deck, so they don't know what to do. They don't actually know how to play the game. No, On a serious note, there are
And
a
if
lot
they
of good
can
Zen
read,
players.
that's why you get them in the cold foil. The glare makes it so they can't read.
Exactly. They're blinded by the light. They're like, well, literally blinded by the light. I can't read this card. It's too shiny. I don't even want to pick it up. It's like, it's too shiny. I don't want to touch your card, man. I get it. Uh, that's why Enigma I play Japanese cards, so they don't even know what's going on. But yeah, no, big brain. No, on a serious note, the match just kind of
Is that
works.
the real reason you don't play Enigma? Because I flamed people on Twitter for trying to play a Japanese deck at Nats?
Oh yeah. Well, actually, that was the reason I want to play Enigma. Is so I had a Japanese card. I just want to piss everyone off. Well, I decided against. I had more reason to play it. No, the deck has a lot of tools for Zen, and it's just really just the way Zen wants to play too. Like we saw it with Evan, right? And he plays two needles, right? Your opponent doesn't want to block as Zen. They want to be aggro. They want to keep hitting you. So the second your Zen player starts blocking, they're losing the game. Like that's such a bad game state for them to be in. They don't all like you can block. There are like the mid range Zen decks that like block with D reacts and they do like fill the graveyard. You know, you don't necessarily want to be blocking. You don't want to be full hand blocking either. Especially when like we're not like racing, but I mean we kind of are racing, right? Like throwing two 6 powered cards at your opponent and they block one of it and they take 6. Like that's what it's 1/8 of their life already. It starts to add up pretty quickly. We're not just throwing measly 0 for 3s, you know, so or measly 0 for 4s. So we're smacking them pretty hard.
These are some big chonkers.
These are some chonkers for sure.
Even with nothing
Yeah.
else, like this is 7 plus you get the trigger of your Figment.
Yep. Yeah, and any Figment, sure. And eventually your Figments start to stack up, and they're throwing 4 at you, and they're giving you 4 life. The damage starts to ramp up pretty quick. So your opponent can't really be incentivized to block. And then, so because of that, it makes even like the 6 power heralds hitting for no reason. So you're just gaining like a lot of equity in the matchup. You're getting a lot of soul. You can set up your Figments however you really want to. And then the second half of the matchup is the pivot turn, where one of a few things happen. So the main one and the best one, obviously, is dropping ALS on their big pop-off turn. You are able to do your combo. Okay, you do Surratt, you pop your helmet, you do your addition, tome, arc light. Beautiful, wonderful. Actually, I played against 4 Zen and National, and I didn't see a single arc light against any of them. Fun fact. I beat 3 of them, so. Yeah, but I still beat them. I still won. So there is a way. There is hope. There might be like ones that I saw an arc light against, but there wasn't many. It was very weird. My hands weren't like super ideal. The way I was able to win is one of the matchups. You dealt so much damage that eventually, when you set up like an Odarath or a Parable on board, they aren't able to deal with that plus all the damage. But another thing too is you do have Stonewall Gauntlet, which will block out if you use it the right timing. Right, you use it when you're doing their Bonds turn and they go Bonds at you. Block with the Gauntlet on Surging Strike, Bonds hits. That's -1 on the Surging Strike, -1 on the Bonds, and then -1 on the card that follows Bonds because it has to be played on Combat Chain.
You mean
you can see out some damage still. Yeah, or whatever card comes next. And then what is the other one? Obviously, you can
because
use
if they try closing the chain on you, the card that they have banished with the bonds will end up staying banished. So they're not incentivized to actually close the chain there. They're just gonna push through at least for one more chain link, depending on what they're doing.
For sure, exactly. And if like they're doing like the swift, the surging winds, whatever it is, the actual Yu-Gi-Oh card is what our playtest group calls it, because you can name anything, you just do weird, crazy stuff, and it does insane combos. If they're playing that, and you can.
Fun fact: we did that for Battle Spirits. We knew very little of the card names. We just all called them what their Magic equivalents were.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Just name it like other card game stuff. But they do the combo card, and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to take the first few attacks. I'll block halfway through because usually that they end on that one with like a Fluster Fist, or they end on like Tiger Swipe to gain a bunch more Tigers if it's like an Heart of War turn. So you break like half that chain, then they like lose like half the damage, which is always very nice. And then Judgment as well is always an option. But you have to be careful, right? So Halo, Halo, in that matchup, you got to like analyze the situation, right? So, you don't have to play for judgment. Judgment will keep you in the game, but really you have to like decide, okay, do I want to judgment my opponent and stop their turn, or do I need to save this Halo to combo off of my opponent? It really depends on your board state. Um, Oddly enough, Zen can have some weird hands where they can't necessarily throw because they don't make just tigers out of nowhere, right? Everyone thinks, oh yeah, Zen has a billion tigers. They can just throw a tiger out of aura. True, but not super necessarily. They're Zens aren't just playing lists where just make 3 tigers and like throw a bunch of tigers at you, right? They usually play more like a Katsu style list that doesn't have Kodachis. Some do, some are needles, but you shouldn't. No Zen player runs needles into Prism, and I don't think you should. I think that's bad. So
It also means
typically,
that if they're holding like a Tiger combo card, well, now they can't do it the way that they wanted to, because if they wanted to end on the swipe or something like that, well, now they are not putting the Tiger into your aura at the end or something like that.
right, and like they have to block with boots, and they don't want to block with boots to get tigers aura. So like it creates like weird states where it's like they can't necessarily swing at an aura as much as they'd like. So your auras stay on board a lot more than you think they would in that matchup, especially compared to like Zen that can like just throw a Kadashi at an aura. So your auras do stick on board a little longer than they should sometimes. Um, and you can kind of build a board state where you don't have to use like Halo of Illumination to flip over Erudition and like get all your vestige triggers going. And since they're also not blocking, sometimes I've had hands where like my opponent's not going to block the first Herald because they can't either like they literally just can't do it with their hand or they don't want to. And then it hits. I'm like, cool. I mentioned earlier you play like the light tome from Arsenal from hand, draw 3 more, flip over Erudition, draw 2 more. You haven't used Halo at all yet. Like your vestige just goes online. You have all these draw cards. You can start doing your erudition combo without having to flip Halo. You just have to kind of measure the game state. But it's nice being
It's
able to
not
like
like what we were
not.
talking about before, where it's like in some of the matchups where you didn't like the Rapture was like you didn't get to choose whether or not you got to hit with your heralds. A lot of the times in this
Mhm.
matchup, it's just happening. Like you don't have
It's just
to.
gonna happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just gonna happen. And if they're blocking that first Herald, even better because now they have a 2 card hand. Okay, that gives me time to go. I can just throw another Herald at them and like are they gonna full block every single Herald? Unlikely. They probably can't block every single Herald. Eventually they're gonna have a
And
hand
they
where
got
they
a lot of
have to
two
take it.
blocks.
They have a lot of 2 blocks, they have a lot of non-blocks, they eventually have to take something. So I feel like pretty confident when I play that matchup that my first Herald probably will hit. And because of that, that just allows me to go, okay, I can probably like first Herald hits, I can play a Merciful off that. Okay, first Herald hits, I can play a Pierce Reality or Pass Mirage after, even if it doesn't hit, and just Arsenal. Um, you have a lot of flexibility at building this board state without having to use your pop off erudition churn. And because they can't really respond to it as well as they probably want to, it gives you just an equity of building this board state that's complicated to deal with. Uh, and then eventually, once you play your Arclight churn, you can just kind of go from there. I do play Library into the matchup as well as Odorath as a secondary kind of win con as well. Obviously, a non block kind of sucks, but like Library is just there for like the high roll potential. The game's gonna end in like 3, 4, 5 turns anyways. So you just play Library, you draw on the first few turns, you
Are
slam it on
you
board.
are you
Cool.
Parable, Ode, Merciful, and Genesis and Arclight?
I'll play it all. Yeah, I play everything. I play.
Sheesh.
Yep, I play every single one in that matchup.
Can't block, won't block.
Can't block, won't block. You're not gonna block. I'm not gonna block. It's fine. It's cool. It's chill. It's a vibe. Because some players might get into this mindset of, oh, we're both not blocking. I'm gonna kill you. Okay, you're gonna kill me. You're gonna ignore my auras. Again, you don't really have free range of throwing your tigers at auras.
Hmm.
If you do, you usually miss like 4 to 7 damage depending on how your turn is kind of maneuvering. Um, and if I have double aura out because I used Tome Fendel to play double aura, like you let when I mentioned earlier, the Tome Fendel playing an aura, playing double aura from hand, your first herald hits. That game state is very likely in this matchup because they're going to let the first herald hit. So you can definitely go, okay, you let my first herald hit, pitch a blue, draw 2, play double or I think you can play double aura off that if you have one floating off yellow. You did like a if you did Herald of if you do Herald of War Tune Herald off a yellow, you have one floating. You paid a yellow, and you draw 2 cards.
This
And
is
you have a
use
blue in
one
hand.
float for tome.
One float. No, you can't. But you can play 2 cards in hand, draw 2 more cards. Yeah, you can. It's weird. You have to draw like double blue, but if you like War Tune off a yellow, have
Yeah,
one
but you're
floating.
nice like that. You're just gonna draw double blue.
Yeah, just double blue, double aura. Totally possible. Happens every time. It sounds like Candyland stuff, right? It sounds like complete Candyland Magic Fantasy stuff. But like realistically, as you're drawing so many cards, it does just happen. And playing one aura is fine, you know. One aura is like sometimes enough. That's all you need.
It's like you have the play that makes sense, and then you have upside of it could be even better if you draw good.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't, it's still fine. You just have upside.
I'm still gaining 4 life. And I'll have all my angels I'm gaining life on as well. Worst case scenario, I do that play. Yeah, I just flip 1. I'll play another aura and arsenal. I gain 4 life. I get another 4 life, so I gained 8 life total plus aura. And I'm like, how do you want to deal with this? Yeah, we're gaming. How do you want to deal with this? Figure it out. So
one question I have about your Halo: are you exclusively using it for your judgment, basically, as your defensive Halo usage, or are you ever triumphing them?
I don't typically triumph them. Mainly because like they don't really they don't play too many poppers. They usually either play like play to 6.
No. As a defensive -1.
Oh, I see.
As a parable.
Like a combat chain, right?
Yeah.
I see what you're
Because if they go for the Art of War shenanigans, but it's not obvious that they're doing the bonds, or maybe their graveyard isn't set up, but they still went for like a double, triple anthem turn. So like, okay, I'm getting punched really hard here, but it's not obvious that they're going to be bondsing me. Do you ever consider triumphing there?
It's tough. It's definitely you have to kind of read the game state, right? So that's one of the how's this game state looking right now? It's always an option. You have to analyze what is your board state, what do you have on board, what's your life, how much damage do they have to throw at you, and do you need to save Halo for anything else? So typically my first checkbox is, do I need to save Halo for Erudition? Do I need to turn this game around if I need to turn this game around next turn, I need to pop off with Erudition. I will take everything and use Halo that later on. If my board state's already pretty well off, I've already done Erudition, then I'll consider, okay, what are the odds they kill me this turn? And I can save Halo for maybe a play next turn, right? Let's say I have like Pierce Reality and let's do something like realistic. Let's do like Pierce Reality and Merciful Retribution. They probably aren't going to attack into Merciful Retribution. Doesn't make any sense. They may attack into Pierce Reality, but they probably would ignore it. Most players do. Always ignore it for some reason. Because I didn't want to trade 4 damage for 2 damage with me, right? They're like, I trade 4 damage for 2. It doesn't make any sense. So, are they going to kill me this turn? Or can I save my Halo for maybe next turn? Either on my next turn or maybe their next turn when they have something more devastating coming up. Or can I save for my turn? And then I go, okay, what I'm going to do is maybe grab a Figment of Ravages or a Figment of War, Figment of Protection, maybe to gain some board state, and then also fix my hand, make all my pitch super high, and then I can go Herald, Angel, Herald, that's, or maybe like Herald, Angel, Angel. I have to kind of like, again, it really depends. But typically, no, I don't want to use Triumph. I don't want to play Triumph like that. I've had times against Zen where I just take Triumph out in general.
So when you're
Judgment
using it defensively, you're favoring the Judgment.
I'm favoring the Judgment, yeah. Because typically the Judgment will save you 7 damage. The Triumph will save you 5, I think it is. Maybe. Because the Triumph can't block. Triumph can't stop the weapons. So weapons are going to be attacked for normal value no matter what. And typically Judgment's going to hit a Bonds, and the Bonds comes in for 4, and the Bonds also gets a card for 3, so that's 7. Whereas Triumph is only stopping 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 attacks probably. And then it can just throw an attack at an aura. And when I Triumph, it encourages them to attack an aura. Whereas a bonds might just interrupt their entire turn, and it saves more damage in general. So typically, no, I don't want to triumph. If I have to, though, it's my only defensive play. I will, of course, but typically I don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, I'd rather just judgment, if possible.
Makes sense.
Yeah, if possible.
Yep. So, are there any other cards that we're playing here that are good for the matchup? Like maybe Herald of Judgment, like any other big.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Like...
Yeah, Herald of Judgment, 100%. You always play into that matchup because it's just that's the card they have to respect, right? That's the Herald. You go, okay. You can't not like if you don't block that, you're not doing anything crazy next turn. I know you can't. You're not allowed to.
And then they take a ton of blood debt. It's great.
Yeah, super awesome, super fog. But other than that, nothing too crazy except all the auras, which people might think is wrong, but I think it works out. The Merciful is there because you take the Soul Shield out, so Merciful is just it sticks on board. So either A, they have no poppers, or B, they have to clear the Merciful, or they choose not to clear the Merciful. Then if I ever play like a Genesis, Odorath, or a Parable, then they have to clear that, and then I get my soul from the Merciful no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Or they choose to ignore everything else now because the Merciful's on the board. It's the mind state, you know. It's you just gotta mess with your opponent's brain. Yeah, you gotta just create situations they don't want to be in.
That's a big thing that like a lot of people I think don't realize when they haven't played a lot of Prism. Like finding ways to make out of turn or out of hitting with Herald Soul, because getting that like one extra soul is a huge deal because you need to for your pop off turn, and ideally a lot of the times you want either 3 or you're going to get another along the way, so that way you can go ALS Erudition and the next turn Erudition again, because if you don't get to Erudition again the next turn it's whatever, it's fine.
Yeah. But we're
not here to just pot of greed. Yeah. We're not trying to pot of greed once. We're trying to pot of greed multiple times.
Trying to omega value. Exactly, yeah. You want to like have as much soul as you can without having to worry about getting soul. Like we're not playing Bolton. We're not going to worry about IPing ourselves 3 cards just to get 1 soul. You know, we're not going to do stupid stuff like that. We're just trying to get soul for like.
I mean, I guess technically Merciful getting played and then dying could be an IP.
I guess it is an IP3. Huh? I was gonna say, I guess it is an IP3 technically. I guess we are IP3 ourselves, but it's cooler. It's a cooler IP3. You know, it's a way cooler than charging.
3 card 1, and I get a soul. Got him.
Got him, dude. Wait, hold on. It takes a weapon attack. Ooh, super based. Yeah. I guess we do IPR sub 3 for. Yeah, I guess we do IPR sub 3 just to gain a soul. But this deck isn't a math deck, you know. You can't play Prism like a math deck. I think you have to play Prism like you're playing like a combo deck. You're playing a Yu-Gi-Oh deck. You're playing Kano. You know, you're playing not math Kano. You're just doing like the most asinine things you could possibly think of, and it usually works out because the value your angels get is mathematically off the charts, and the value your auras get when they stick around is absolutely insane. And the value your soul gives you is crazy.
The more auras you have, and the more turns they stick around.
Exactly. Right? Like a Pierce Reality for 0 for 2, cringe. Pierce Reality 0 for 4, base. 0 for 6, crazy, you know? But
it's a 0 for 2 and then they kill it.
Even better.
Maybe that was fine. Maybe you ate 4 damage worth of value there.
Or even honestly, but a 0 for 2, regardless of the killer or not, it gets my angel to hit, and now all my combos start to trigger. Even better, you know. Or the real
2, but it was specifically on the Erudition.
Or even yeah, exactly right. Or the best part of it, my favorite part about Pierce Reality is it's a 0 for mind game. You know, it's a 0 for I play this card. Are you gonna attack it or you would not attack it? Are you gonna misplay? I'm gonna make you misplay. You know what? It's weird to say, oh, it's like this entire deck's making your opponent do bad stuff. I mean, no, that's not the idea of it. But it is taking advantage of putting your opponent in position and taking advantage of whatever mistakes they may make, or taking advantage of whatever mistakes they think they don't make, and working with what you got. You know, I think that's the fun of the deck. That's why I really like playing this deck. Is that like it? There's not a lot of decks in this game that you can like psych your opponent out with. Except maybe like the reaction decks, right? Like you got New, and you have like Warrior, and they have like a lot of mind games. But this is actual like board state mind games. Like you're like playing face up here's what I have, and then your hand is your traps or like your like counter spells, right? Whatever game you want to come from. It's like just like putting that mental pressure on your opponent in a big tournament
Hmm.
and being able to take advantage of situations that they may make a mistake in, or maybe it was just the right play to just go on aura and that's what they do. Great, but now it was actually the wrong play. I can
Yeah,
do
my
this.
favorite
I
is
have
like go to that example of the Pierce. They kill the Pierce. I had an Erudition set, but I'm just not going to play it this turn. And then I just play. They kill the Pierce, and then I just play double aura, and then say call them a clown for killing my Pierce. I wasn't going to throw a Herald anyways. I mean, I was going to throw a Herald, but they didn't know
yeah.
that.
I don't know that. Not the
now it
mental game of I should have just attacked him. Why did I go a Pierce reality? This is
now
so
it make them
stupid.
question all their decisions for the rest of the game.
And I'm just gonna ignore this passing mirage for 10 turns until the one turn it comes up, and it's like, why did I ever kill the passing mirage? Uh, Obviously, if you die with like 4 auras on board, there was no value to be gained from any of your auras. But it's
Hmm.
still just like the auras give so much value, and then the angels can just do such insane stuff. And obviously, once you get like an aura or two on board with a few angels, off to the races with you. Because even more annoying Dromine at that point. So.
Okay, I think we covered everything for Zen. Unless you have anything else you want to say about specific cards or strategy.
No, I mean that's pretty much it. Like the matchup isn't like 80-20. It's something insane. There's no like super big tech I can give aside from like just trying to play what your hand kind of gives you, understanding that you're probably gonna have a lot of on hit equity in that matchup.
Hmm.
Uh
There's just a lot of
and
game to be played from the Prism side. It's not just get dunked on.
yeah. And I mean like a lot of it is like it is high rolly, but it's high rolly on both sides, right? Like they have to high roll you quicker than you start to combo off on them. And that's kind of a hard ask, especially when they can't really block your heralds. Like if you're saying, all right, I'm going to be Zen, I'm going to high roll you before you can high roll me, but I'm like, all right, I'm Prism, all my heralds are hitting. Like, can you high roll me while I'm actually maneuvering my game state, like to actually do what I want to do? It's kind of hard to do. So, um,
Uh,
other than
yeah,
that, I just kind of hope for the best. So, Enigma, Enigma, yeah. So you sit down
step one:
across
don't get
Enigma
high
player.
rolled.
First of all, don't get high rolled on stream. No. Uh, if you do, you just kind of laugh it off and say it is what it is. Um,
Got card gamed.
yeah, card games. I mean, the matchup is hard uh, for both players, I think, because the builds can kind of widely differ. Obviously, you want to be, unlike what I did on stream, you want to be throwing as many heralds as you can and setting up auras as you kind of go. The way you win that matchup for this deck is you do win it off establishing the auras, but you have to establish the auras in between, like getting off Herald hits, right? So usually, like Herald, do that for a few turns. Eventually, you line up the turn of like Tome, Soraya, get a few Herald, few auras on board, and sometimes you just have to like double aura them. It is what it is. It's not the greatest, but sometimes, much like your bad hands you can have, uh, unlike Dromai, which is the very key thing, unlike Dromai, Enigma does have bad hands, where she's just like, oh, my hand's on D-Reacts.
Hmm.
Or, oh, my hand's like 2 D-Reacts, 2 poppers in hand. Something just like gross, something just stupid. Or like a Manifestations, D-React. No, like, she can just have a bad hand.
Not enough
Maybe,
proactive cards.
yeah, not enough proactive cards, exactly. Maybe it's like even just like a Manifestations, or special Manifestations, a, uh, a blue pitch chi that they can't even flip over a D react and a popper. Like
Hmm.
they could just have like a kind of a whiff turn where they just attack one aura and pass, and that's kind of where you want to be at. So you gotta you have to gauge it, how defensive they're gonna be, uh, how aggressive they are, or how aggressive they're playing,
Yeah, I'd say
and
typically
kind
you're
of go
not
from
under
there.
like a huge clock in that matchup. It's like you've got time to do your thing for at least a few turns.
For a few turns, yeah. Typically, you shouldn't be on a big clock unless they Sacred Arts you turn one. In which case, get
Yeah,
get
you
get
don't have
L
like a
dance
two
on
turn
Bozo.
clock.
Yeah, and then you're probably gonna lose. That's because I've tested that matchup a lot. If you ever get Sacred Arts on within the first 3 turns, you probably lose that matchup because there's no time to establish anything, unless you Omega High Roll. Uh, so that can be doomed. But you have to try the best. Try the best, and just and hope for the best. Usually aggro can kind of get you there, but you can't just be purely aggro. You need to have like a few tricks here and there to kind of put them on edge. I think because a good enigma will be able to beat you. If you're just going pure aggro, I think that a good built enigma list should be able to like fatigue you a little bit, or
Hmm.
kind of counter it.
Yeah, like this
Yeah.
is what I was doing the matchup. Let me know if this is kind of different than what you were doing. It was like
Mhm.
throw heralds at them to kind of keep it at bay. Like this is I don't want this to get too out of control. And then while I'm doing this, I'm establishing some auras behind it, and then
Right.
waiting for my chance to go. And then when I find the go hand, I'm gonna combo off as hard as possible, and we're gonna reset the game where I have a massive board, and I'm gonna go back to throwing heralds, but it's gonna be I'm gonna go herald angel herald with auras behind it, so that way I'm getting all this value, and you now need to spend your turn blocking and picking off my things, so you're not progressing the game from your side for quite a while.
100%. And something that like you made me think of actually too. And it's kind of it's probably obvious like me and you who've been playing illusions for so long, but maybe for people who maybe have not been playing illusions for a very long time, uh, something to kind of keep in mind is, and the reason this like throw heralds at the first half and then like play an aura, the reason it works. Um, so depending on how your opponent blocks, uh, they only have so many cards your opponent can usually use per turn cycle, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if your opponent blocks with half their hand and they keep 2 cards, they can spend a turn clearing an aura, but it's a lot harder for them to establish a board state and clear 2 auras or like do anything meaningful in like clear an aura, right? So they're
They
not
kind of
going to
might like
present
have to
as
pick a thing.
right, and they can't present like a very threatening board state and clear an aura at the same time. Um, so you can kind of gauge how much your opponent's blocking. Like you can kind of interrupt half their block and go, okay, well you have no board state, you block 2 cards. I'm not going to give you another attack. I'm going to play an aura now. Or I'm going to try and like throw out a tome and play double aura.
Mm-hmm.
Just stuff like that. Or maybe I'm going to like go. I'm going to use my hand to go play a blue aura, flip an angel. That is like a pretty solid turn. Actually, one of my more favorites in Enigma when you do get figments established earlier on is playing blue aura, usually Pierce, which is something I've been thinking about putting a third Pierce in this matchup, or third Pierce in the deck for that matchup specifically. We're going like Pierce or Pass, and then flip an Angel, right?
I'm a big fan
If
of the
they,
three Pierce. I do think
yeah,
in your list it's like a little tough with the tomes, so like I could
mm-hmm.
understand not.
But it's definitely something I consider for this matchup, and like in general, I've liked Pierce Reality more than I did before. I didn't like it back when Dromite because you didn't need it, but
Yeah.
nowadays I feel it's a lot better. Um, but yeah, like if they have 2 cards in hand, how are they going to establish a board state to clear Angel plus Aura?
Mm-hmm.
That's a tall order. You need to have something in Arsenal that's like exactly resource curved around 2, and you need like 1 and 2, right? So just like kind of establishing those board states uh, based on the cards in hand is very important. And as Prism player, you should always be looking how many cards your opponent's blocking and kind of what they're trying to do. You also should be trying to understand like what kind of gameplay style they usually play. If my opponent is more someone who's going to focus on auras, obviously I'm not going to just like keep throwing an aura on board for one. Like it's like it's not worth it to be throwing auras on board. My opponent's going to control auras all game. If they're going to control auras. I need to focus on okay. My opponent is going to be playing a slower game state because they're going to control my auras. So I need to focus on setting up a combo turn by putting out 3 auras, and usually like off the back of like erudition. If my opponent's being a lot more aggressive and they're ignoring auras, then I have a bit more leniency in terms of maybe blocking or attacking them and going face, and then setting up an aura. It's like getting ready for my big. Okay, I have 3 auras on board, or 4 auras on board. You've ignored 1 or 2 over the game state. Now I put 2 more on board at the same time. How do you deal with 4 auras? Do you keep attacking me? If you do, you're probably going to lose because one of them's probably a parable at that point. You know, it's a lot of it is reading how your opponent is playing the game, uh, what kind of player they are, what kind of deck style they built their deck to do,
Mm-hmm.
and taking advantage of when they block and taking advantage of maybe they might have a weaker turn hand or stuff like that. That's kind of what I look for, and I think that's especially needed in Enigma because Enigma is going to go okay. There, if there's someone who's blocking all the time, you might need more of a block focused deck, which means they do have chances to brick, which means you can set up double aura easy without worrying about a big crackback turn. but there may be a deck that is a lot more aggressive. I think we saw that a lot more in nationals. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like a lot of the decks they did play like D-Reacts and whatnot, but it didn't seem like super tanky Enigmas. They seemed more like mid-range, kind of aggressiver Enigmas, especially with like to
Yeah, I
deal
think
with
the ones
Zens.
that did well day one and made it to day two, a lot of those were like that.
Mm-hmm. And in those matchups, you have to be more proactive with throwing your heralds out and then like taking advantage of maybe when they start to have a bit weaker hands or turn cycles, then you can like pop off a tome and do your triple aura turn or double aura turn and go from there. So
Hmm.
here's something I want to mention. I was like, that's like a generic illusions thing. Like that's like an overall illusions thing. That's like the idea of tempo, right?
Yeah, I
As
think that
people
you
call it.
kind of mentioned that too with Ninja also of like understanding like what the matchup plays out like once they start blocking.
Mm-hmm.
I think a bit of that is like an overall fab thing too. That's just like players aren't good at this like initially, and it's like a skill that people should be working on developing, where it's understanding the kind of hand textures that the opponent wants to have and the number of
Mm-hmm.
cards that they want to have. We kind of touched on that in my, I don't know if you ever saw that, my video with Yuanji forever ago of implied value. It's like understanding like, okay, what does my opponent do with this many cards, and like, well, okay, go to the Prism side again. What if my opponent's playing this hyper defensive deck and I just play two auras and pass and strand them with 5 cards? What are
You
they
can't do anything.
what are they doing
Yeah.
with that?
What are they doing? They're doing nothing usually, typically, right?
So it's like
Exactly. Exactly.
understanding how to punish them for different hand textures that they could have, and understanding what do they want to be doing on their side of the matchup, and do the opposite.
Right, exactly. And that goes back to the Zen. Like, if my Zen opponent blocks 2 cards, it's the perfect time to play an Aura because typically they can't threaten my life total and clear an Aura. So they're going to spend an entire card. They're going to spend their entire turn cycle just clearing an Aura at that point, or they're going to spend their entire turn cycle throwing it at me. But if they
Mm-hmm.
spend their entire turn cycle clearing an Aura, that gives me more leniency to start slowly waiting for my turns to go Arc Light and doing my big turns. And it all kind of accumulates, you know. It is kind of saying, okay, what illusionist is just the most important of understanding what an opponent's hand size means, um, which it can be a bit harder when you're playing on Talishar, and it's why like last time when I did another interview, I recommend playing in person. But it can be a bit harder, at least for me personally, um, to understand like what a hand size means if you're playing on Talishar because everything's so automated that like it's like for me at least, I'm like I don't even think about it. Like I kind of just go through the motions on Talishar sometimes. But when you're playing in person, you can see like I'm sitting. Let's say we're sitting across from each other, right? And you're look. How long are you going to be looking at your hand for, right? If you're sitting there looking at your hand for a long time, you block, and now you're looking at 2 cards. And you're thinking for a long time. I can understand I'm putting you in a difficult situation, which means I can keep kind of maneuvering in a certain way. Or I can go, okay, this is good for future reference. This is what puts my opponent in like a difficult situation. You know, it's easier to kind of read like your opponent and reading
Their body
like game
language and
states
everything.
and body language as well, right? I think that's like a decently important thing when you're playing with illusionists as well. Just like especially Prism, where you're putting all the issues and all the complications on your opponent, reading how they play as a player. When some players just like show no emotion, but like the delay action between how fast they're playing and how slow they're playing is also an emotion, right? They're taking a long
Mm-hmm.
time to decide a turn. They're in a difficult position. If they're playing very fast, they might be ignoring auras sometimes. They're not going to read some cards, in which case you can kind of take advantage of some auras that people don't really recognize, like Odoraph, stuff like that. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, just illusions things. Kind of went off tangent, but that's like I guess a deep dive
I,
on
I like
on
that tangent.
psychology, right?
That resonated
Yeah,
with me.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I
It's
think
fun stuff to think about.
good time to put a bow on this though. What
Yep.
do you think about Prism's place in the meta going into Amsterdam, and are there any broad stroke changes that you think you would make to this deck for that upcoming meta? Assuming we don't have any bans or anything, let's just assume
For
it's
sure.
the current meta with people adjusting to the meta.
Maybe they hit the kitty boots. That's it. Okay, so that's still best stack. Whatever. Um, sure, right? Typical LSS fashion. Um, yeah. Well, Prism already got a few top eights, which is a terrible deck. No. On all seriousness, actually, she hasn't top eight these nationals. She's up again. This is usually like when I'm in the chat with all the boys. I'm always going through the copium waves of Prism top eight this national. She's terrible. Prism in the top 8. We're back on the board, baby. No one thinks of Prism. Like just like the Kano Copers. We're basically one big family. Um, but honestly, going into Amsterdam, it is tough. I think she's in a good state, but she is. I was watching. I think I watched like an interview with like Evan, and he mentioned it himself, and he put it pretty well. It's like you play Prism, and you have to just understand that sometimes the deck is just going to give you an L, and that's just a fact. Like
Yeah, that's like one of the
sometimes,
biggest complaints that I've had about the deck. Like I'm
Mhm.
pretty sure I've had this conversation with you in person where I was like, I just don't like that I don't get to decide whether or not I win sometimes. It's just like, did my cards come into me in an order that let me have a chance at winning the game? No? Okay. Just F you, I
right?
guess.
Exactly. It's gonna the cards give you like a different kind of like situational value. You know, like in Flesh and Blood, you typically have control of the game, say by blocking out, regaining your health. You know, and Prism doesn't do that. She says, "Here's the card you're going to work with. How do you put your opponent in a tight situation to get out of it?" And sometimes she just gives you nothing, and that's just how it is. Or sometimes your opponent just has the exact cards they need to deal with the situation, and you lose. That's how it is. Sometimes you sit across from the crazy psychopath who brought Levi to the tournament and wants to grief you. That's how it is.
But then he's
Uh,
across the psychopath that brought Iris.
yeah, true. There we go. And we grieve him back. But it's just one of those things, you know. Um, I think she is pretty well positioned for the meta,
Mhm.
especially if Zen is still like best deck. The only issue, the biggest issue I see, as we mentioned earlier, is Dash is becoming a bit better because of what the meta really is. I think I'm not sure if Azalea is being forced out of the meta or not. I can't really tell. I think she's still a good deck, but I feel like
Yeah,
I
I feel
think
like she's
Brody.
underrepresented for how good she is.
Yeah, I feel like people were like really hyped up on her, but now Zen's just like the best deck, and everyone's all like having a midlife crisis right now, and they don't know what to do with their heroes. So everyone's like, let's just play Zen. But like people are still sticking to KO, you know, and like KO still kind of sucks. So, but the issue is, of course, is that Dash is coming into play. She has a lot of really good matchups. I think her matchup into Zen is like either either Dash, both of them, even Max. Honestly, like I think all three of them have really good game into Zen just because they can just strip his armor away with T-bones like early, and they're like, oh my god, wait a minute, I didn't want to use my kitty boots now. Wait, I don't want to use my chest piece. Wait, give me back my helmet. You know, like being able to strip away his armor so rapidly on like a high roll hand is insane. And even with outside the high roll hand, like you have so much game into like just going aggro and like being an aggressive deck. And then like OG Dash also has a lot of game into new. Um, like being able to keep a 2 card hand. Starting with the restanding pistol weapon. I haven't played the deck in so long, induction chamber. Starting with chamber and just thinking, okay, yeah, you're playing a super cool deck new. Anyways, I block 2 cards, I shoot a pistol. I block 2 cards, I block 3 cards, I shoot a pistol. Every single turn. It's just like, oh, that's kind of annoying.
Hmm.
So like you kind of like out grind game them, which is really interesting. Um, I think Mech is very well positioned in this meta, and I think people are like really catching on to it, which is like worrisome for Prism because if Mech is big, Dash or yeah, Mech is big, Prism
I'm
doesn't feel
confused.
as
Are we
good.
talking about Mech or Prism? I thought you wanted Dash to get
I
stricken for
I
a
know, right?
100. You told me to take it
Actually,
off the show notes.
actually change
Make up
that,
your
change the
mind. Are we
icon,
talk? Are we
change
talking
the
about
Mech.
Mech or not?
I'm having a crisis. Actually, change the icon to Dash. Put Dash on the screen. This is the Dash talk now. I'm doing a Dash deck profile.
All right, switch the oversized
Um,
cards out.
yeah, right. Just grab the giant mech, put the giant Dash on there. Um, yeah, honestly, it's funny because I played both mech and I play illusionist, but illusionist just gets countered. Prism gets countered by mech right now. So I don't know. I think she's pretty well positioned. I think you can probably will end up fighting a lot of Zens no matter what.
Hmm.
You just might end up getting unlucky and having a bad matchup into a dash here and there, and you just gotta accept the L. I mean, I played Prism when there was 80 KOs in the field and 50 drum eyes. When I just accepted the KOL, it is what it is sometimes. I think the most important thing, obviously, for Amsterdam is actually just being good. Just gotta know how to draft, and if you don't know how to draft, good luck. That's the biggest thing. But I do think Prism will probably get you there, and you just have to be ready to accept getting unlucky or playing against
Yeah.
your bad matchups. But if you can like not, if you're someone who doesn't tilt under, and I think this is an important part too. If you want to play Prism, if you're someone who doesn't tilt under like pressure, or you can like maintain calmness, I think that's very important because Prism is always going to put you. You're going to be the game state where you're at 3 life and your opponent's at 32, and you have to literally do the "nah I win" and actually win meme. But you have to like actually go "nah I win" and then actually win because the amount of times I won games over the weekend where I was at 3 life, 2 life, 1 life, my opponent was literally at like 30, and I just win. Like you just have to
I
do
think
it.
you've described every time I've ever played against a new. It's just
Yeah,
like
100%.
literally that matchup every time.
Yeah, every time I play against 3 news this weekend. I was just like at 3, and I'm like, all right, I win from here, right? Which is insane to think about. But you have to like be able to keep calm under pressure and not go, oh my god, I might die this turn. I have to triumph in response just to live. Like no 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 no. It's okay to take damage. It's okay to go to 2. Unless they have quick knives, you have to be at 3 or 4 or 5. You gotta be a little higher.
You
But
have to.
yeah,
That's like after playing the deck for all. You have to understand like you're at 2, but they're never doing a point of damage to you again.
right, exactly. It's definitely a deck that I think you need a lot of reps on. I think it's a rep heavy deck just because like it's not just learning the combos, but also learning what game situation, like game states, game situations, and also being comfortable being at a low life, being comfortable not playing regular Flesh and Blood. So if you're like more of a math player, this might be a very hard kind of transition. If you're not very much of a combo player, it's a hard transition. But if you like light combo decks, and if you're an illusionist main, I mean, I think Enigma's cope. I don't know what, but Enigma's been winning, so I don't know what to say.
I will say this was a tough transition for me playing this style of deck because I'm not a combo player, but I wouldn't even necessarily call myself a flesh and blood player. Like the decks that I played in the past, Dromai, OG Prism, it was, board state, ally control style of decks
Mhm.
where it's like I'm not playing Fab, I'm playing Magic. And
Yeah,
this feels like I'm playing Yu-Gi-Oh!
it is. It is. It's very much like or even like Battle Spirits to a degree, right? It's like board state, but board state to do a giant
Core
combo
Step!
pop off ridiculous. Or yeah, board step, Tunic, Genesis Trigger. Uh, yeah, no, it's definitely not similar to the board state decks we had in the past, where it's like you build this board state and you kind of like slowly grind game your opponent and then slowly like switch the tempo. It is very much a
Oops, I
you do
win.
crazy stuff, oops I win type of deck. Yeah, which is fun and it feels really great to play, but it can be very difficult to pick up, especially if you're not used to that and like Flesh and Blood. Because we, as Flesh and Blood players, we start the game with this different kind of mentality in card games, which is very good. But then like when we come to combo decks, you're like, what the heck? Which is why
Hmm.
Kano players have always been Kano mains for the rest of their life because they can never play another deck because it's not a combo deck. They
Which is
don't
why
even know
they
what to
can't
do.
draft. Which is why they
Yeah,
can't draft.
exactly. You can't draft because you don't know. You wait. Well, how do I play regular Flesh and Blood? Check the top card. Play it. I can't.
Shots fired.
I don't. Yep. Classic Kano players.
All right.
One
Any
day.
last
One
closing
day.
thoughts?
I think we covered a lot of the more detailed stuff, and we covered like mentality stuff. I think that's the main thing. Uh, I love illusionist. That's it. Closing thoughts. Can we please James White, if you're watching this, Brian, if you're watching this, any LSS designer, if you're watching this, please make more allies. No more Enigma. I actually don't. I have the Enigma cards. I played the hero. I like it, but I started this game for allies. Can we please get more allies? Not just dragons, not just angels. Let's get some ghosts. Let's get some samurai and ghost armor allies. That'd be cool. I'm so sad at him, but they get an ally. I was devastated, heartbroken, truly.
Let me
But it was.
tell you about another hero. Kasai.
Uh,
And on
no.
that note, time to end the episode.
Thank you for having me.
Anything that you want to plug?
Oh, of course, yeah. Shout out to AGE Arcane Gaming events. They do videos every month in case you ever want to like watch people who I think are pretty good players play in a big tournament for prizing. You get like Chris, Charles Dunn, a lot of my teammates there. You get really relevant players going there. And I think it's really good to like watch CC games, kind of understand how decks go. As we were mentioning before, understanding what people can do with their hand size. They do videos every month. I have a Twitter account, but I don't. I barely post. I only post when I win. So that means I never post. But yeah,
More
so that's just
anti-memes.
me. Yeah, right. And we'll post some repost some memes, right? Um, But yeah, Pug Arcane Games. That's all. Oh, and shout out to my teammates for also helping me out with all that stuff, and all my friends in Arizona who have so diligently dealt with my Prism shenanigans for so long, and all
Uh,
this unbearableness.
the
Yep.
deck list will be in the description below, as well as, if I remember, a link to Arcane Games YouTube channel. Inevitably, it's going to be I forgot it, and then there's going to be a comment saying you forgot it, and then it'll be there magically.
Yeah,
um, thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you, Austin, for joining me today. Peace, YouTube.
absolutely.